Okay, hello, dear friends, and welcome to the Conscious Contact Big Book study of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am an alcoholic. My name is David. It's good to see you all. Thank you all for showing up like this. And we're going to start the meeting as we normally do with the preamble. And I've asked our friend Nancy to read it for us. So
Good evening, everyone. AA Preamble. I'm Nancy. I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Thank you.
Nancy, thank you so much. And so, if folks would be so kind, if you would join me now in taking a moment of silence for the still sick and suffering alcoholics in and out of the room, followed by the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thy will, not mine, be done. Since we have some folks who may not have been with us for the Big Book meeting before, I'll just give you a quick rundown. We normally meet every Sunday morning at bright and early at 6:30. We usually, I know that is pretty early for folks, but we usually have about 40 people there, and it's a great meeting. We've been going strong for about 2 years now, and one of the things that we do on like traditional big book meetings, which at least when I came up through when I was in my early years of sobriety, a big book meeting focused on an entire chapter, and the longer I was sober, the more I realized, wow, there's just so much here that I feel like that I don't understand or I'm not getting, and it was very much like trying to drink from a fire hose. And then several years ago, when my AA program, like a lot of people's, transitioned onto Zoom with the pandemic, um, I started finding out about new types of AA meetings, and especially like the Bronx Big Book Study and the Bring Your Own Coffee group. And what they did was they went line by line, which basically means they went very slowly through the text. And it really, when I was exposed to that, and when I learned about that, and was at those meetings, a whole new world opened up to me, of understanding the program, of understanding how to work the program, of understanding how to carry the message. And so it's once I got a taste of that, I wanted to share it with others. So that's why we started this meeting a couple years back. And one of the things we do is we also, as we go along, so we read through the text, we read through very slowly, we point out things that I was always curious about in the text that might get missed. We focus on some of the wording that might be a little unusual for a 21st century reader. And and then the other thing that we do is we categorize the text into one of five categories. Because what I found is that Bill did not write the book as a traditional textbook in a sort of a linear manner. It's almost like a novel in that it sort of shifts from one topic to another, and it'll come back around, and it can sometimes get confusing. But one of the things that I found that helps is really thinking about it in terms of, okay, what is the main focus here? And one of the things I'll share this with you to help illustrate what I'm talking about. What I find is that when we look at the first 164 pages of the book, the text usually falls into one of three categories, and that's questions, directions, and explanations, promises, warnings, and history. And the reason why I have that marked in different colors is because one of the things that I like to do is, as I'm going through the book with somebody, especially newcomers, is to ask them to use different color highlighters to highlight the questions all in like orange or red or something, and directions and explanations in green. And the reason for this is that it really makes it easy to identify those things when you are, because the whole point is not about, it's about sharing the message with others, and it's about because that is where the spiritual connection has really happened for me, not just when I understand the program, but when I help others to understand the program. And so, as we go along today, one of the things I'll be doing is pointing out which of the categories the text falls into, and we've got a few of them today. So, as I mentioned earlier, we are starting on page 68. We're going to go over to page 69. I'm going to, since it's been a little bit since we've been at this part of the book, I'm going to back up a little bit, not too far, just a little bit, and to the paragraph before, because we're in the chapter that we are in is how it works, and we are talking about the inventory process, specifically the fourth step. And if we look at the paragraph above, Bill is telling us, he's giving us direction on how to do a fear inventory. And what he's saying, and we have the first two sentences, we're starting with the paragraph actually, because I'm backing up a little bit, called "We Reviewed Our Fears Thoroughly." So it's pretty near the top of 68. And the first two sentences are direction. So it's telling us we review our fears thoroughly, and we review them. We just don't think about them. We put them on paper, and we actually look at them, almost clinically, you might say. We detach from the emotion, and we really examine those fears, and we put them on paper. There is the direction again, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. Then we have a question. We asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance had failed us? And right there, in those two sentences, we asked ourselves why we had these fears. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? What I am seeing is that my fears, the experience of fears, the thing that I've ruminated on so much of my life, is really because I've insisted on being self-reliant rather than building a relationship with God. And one of the things I learned from the 12 and 12 is also this self-reliance is really, when you read the step 4 in the 12 and 12, it talks about pride. So really, our fears are a result of our pride, a character defect. Self-reliance was good, and now we have a warning for the rest of the chapter. Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. And so now we're beginning the next paragraph with a promise. And the promise is, perhaps there is a better way. So we're being offered a promise. And the next sentence is a promise too. For we are now on a different basis. The basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite self. And one of the things, and that's all of those sentences that we've read so far in that paragraph, they're all promises. And one of the things that I've found through my experience is this notion of God being infinite is, I think, it's a central principle that underscores our program and our approach to life. I know for many years I struggled because I would sort of minimize God. I had another alcoholic in my home group talked just recently about constantly engaging in low-grade atheism, like where where the ego and the pride start to take over and push God out around the corners. And but now it's so what we're being given here is a principle of living on a different basis. And now some critical direction. We are in the world to play the role He assigns. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. You could also say that that is a promise, and notice what they're saying there. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us. And specifically what they're saying there, or what Bill is saying right there. When he says, we do as we think He would have us, what he's really talking about, he's not just talking about having the intention of trying to do God's will. He's really talking about following the directions in the big book, living by the principles, practicing the actions. So when he talks about doing as being in alignment with God's will, it's really about being in alignment with the principles in our book, in our text. And then he moves on to more direction in the next paragraph. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality is the way of weakness. Now, what's important, I think, here to recognize when he says we can laugh, he means like a good-natured chuckle. He's not talking about a condescending laugh, or where we perceive ourselves to be better than people who don't believe in God. Because remember, one of our key principles, our code, love and tolerance of others. The verdict of the ages is that Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. And then in the middle of the paragraph we have a critical promise. All men of faith have courage. That doesn't mean that we just can will our way into courage. What he's talking about is the way of faith, is the way, remember, faith without works is dead. So what he's talking about is as a result of taking the action of the steps and working the big book, one of the fruits of that we are going to see is the development of courage. They trust their God, and that's because they have cultivated a relationship with that God. We never and now more direction. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let Him demonstrate through us what He can do. We ask Him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. And that's, of course, that last sentence is a promise. We outgrow fear. Why do we outgrow fear? We outgrow fear because we are dedicating our life and how we move through the world at being useful to other people. And in doing so, God is constantly going to present us with situations and teachers and lessons that will allow us to move beyond fear. The final paragraph on 68, now about sex. And we have a warning. That's just explanation, that the short sentence, what about, now about sex, and then a warning. Many of us needed an overhauling there. And then direction. But above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It is so easy to get way off track. And then more warning. Here we find human opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. Then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think we do not have enough of it, or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. And here's what's brilliant about how Bill handles this, because bear in mind, we're talking about 1939 when he is writing this. And people really didn't talk about sex a whole lot back then. But he's jumping right in because he's recognizing that for many of us, our alcoholism is closely linked to our sex drive and how we acted that out. But he wants to stay out of judgment, and which I think is brilliant. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter. That means the judge. We do not want to be the judge of anyone's, sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We hardly be human if we didn't. And though that's explanation, and then we end with a question. What can we do about them? And I just want to, I mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to frame it. So what he's really talking about there is just like we approach any other problem or any other situation in our life, we're going to move away from instincts and toward principles. So his point is, and we'll see this, is that we step away from acting out on instincts and we conduct ourselves according to spiritual principles. Um, so again, he's talking about what we're seeing is a sex inventory here. He's laying out how we do that. And we reviewed our own conduct over the years past. So we've got clear direction there. We're being told by the book that what we need to do is a written sex inventory. And there are several questions that we're being asked to address. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? Those are all questions, of course. And then here's the direction. We got this all down on paper and looked at it. And I can, if you've been around a while, you probably know there's a huge difference between thinking about something, talking about it, and putting it down on paper. Because when I put it down on paper, it starts to lose the power that it had over me. And the other thing that is critical about putting this stuff on paper is that it allows me to share it with a sponsor or a spiritual advisor. Now, also, one of the things I want to point out is that we just went through a series of questions there. And when I did my most recent fourth and fifth step, what my sponsor did was he had me write out those questions at the top of each page of my inventory so that I was just like earlier in the book when it's talking about the columns and Mr. Brown and all of that. I'm doing the same thing with the sex inventory. It's all in columns, and so it's sort of a very methodical process. And then we're going to finish up with this paragraph, this next paragraph. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal of our future sex life. I think that sentence is important because it really is the underlying theme of how we approach sex through a 12-step program. And when it says a sane and sound idea, he's talking about spiritual principles. So we try to base our sex life on spiritual principles rather than instincts or self-gratification. And then a question. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? And then that question actually gets inserted into the inventory columns. And then we're closing it out with the rest of this paragraph is direction. We ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. What he's talking about there is we clean house with our sex life. We do that in a written fashion, and we do that in order to, and it will talk a little bit in a couple paragraphs later, it talks about having our ideal. We shape an ideal of what our life, our sex life, is supposed to be, and then we live towards that ideal accordingly. And it's, again, principle based rather than instincts or just reaction. So I'm going to end my part there. And what we normally do at this point in the morning meeting is we open it up